The fire burned bright against the Montana night sky, but brighter still burned Katherine Kane's determination as she raced toward the blaze that was consuming Logan Armstrong's homestead. The year was 1876, and in this unforgiving land, tragedy was as common as the dust that blanketed the plains. But what transpired on this autumn night would forever change the course of lives across the frontier. Katherine kicked her heels against her mare's flanks, urging the tired animal faster. The screams of children carried on the wind, striking her heart like physical blows. She'd been riding back to town after delivering medicines to the Wilkins family when she spotted the orange glow on the horizon. Now, as she approached, she could see the full horror unfolding. The modest ranch house was engulfed in flames, the fire licking hungrily at the dry timber walls. "Help! Somebody help!" The desperate cries came from a man on his knees in the yard, his face blackened with soot, his expression wild with panic. Katherine dismounted before her horse had fully stopped, her boots hitting the hard-packed earth with a thud. "Where are they?" she shouted, already running toward the burning structure. "My boys!" the man cried, his voice cracking. "Upstairs. I tried to reach them, but the stairs—" He broke into a fit of coughing, his lungs punishing him for his earlier rescue attempts. Katherine didn't hesitate. She pulled her shawl over her mouth and nose and ran to the water pump, soaking the fabric thoroughly before approaching the house. The heat pushed against her like a solid wall, but she pressed forward, entering through the door that hung crookedly from its hinges. Inside, the smoke was suffocating, swirling in thick plumes that made her eyes water and her lungs burn. The main floor was a maze of fallen beams and burning furniture. Through watering eyes, she spotted the staircase partially collapsed, but potentially passable. "I'm coming!" she called upward, praying the children could hear her over the roar of the flames. She tested the first step, then the second, climbing cautiously but quickly. A beam crashed behind her, sending sparks flying. Katherine pressed onward, half climbing, half crawling up what remained of the stairs. On the second floor, she dropped to her hands and knees, where the smoke was thinnest. "Where are you?" she called out, her voice raspy from the smoke. A small whimper led her to a corner bedroom. Two small boys, no older than 5 and 7, huddled together beneath a window, terror etched on their tear-streaked faces. "It's all right," Katherine said, reaching for them. "I'm going to get you out of here." The older boy shook his head frantically. "The monster will eat us," he sobbed, pointing at the flames that now licked at the doorframe. "No, sweetheart, I won't let it." Katherine scooped up the smaller boy and took the older one's hand. "Hold tight to me. Don't look at the fire. Look at me." The journey back downstairs was treacherous. The staircase had deteriorated further, forcing Katherine to navigate carefully. She helped the older boy down first, then followed with the younger one clutched tightly to her chest. A terrifying crack sounded above them. Katherine looked up to see a massive beam giving way. With a strength born of desperation, she shoved the older boy forward toward the door, then threw herself and the smaller child the remaining distance, rolling onto the packed dirt yard just as the beam crashed down where they had been standing. The father staggered forward, gathering his sons in his trembling arms, tears cutting clean tracks through the soot on his face. "Thank God," he repeated over and over, rocking the boys against him. Katherine sat in the dirt, coughing violently, her lungs screaming for clean air. Her dress was singed, her hands blistered, but the sight of those children alive in their father's embrace made the pain inconsequential. "You saved my boys," the man said, finally looking at her with red-rimmed eyes. "You saved them when I couldn't." "Anyone would have done the same," Katherine managed between coughs. "No, they wouldn't." He shook his head firmly. "I'm Logan Armstrong. These are my sons, William and Samuel, and I owe you everything." Katherine tried to smile, though her face felt tight from the heat. "Katherine Kane." And you don't owe me anything, Mr. Armstrong. I'm just glad I was passing by. Little did she know as she sat there in the glow of the dying flames that this night marked not an end, but a beginning. The story of the woman who carried no child but risked everything to save a stranger's sons would soon spread throughout the Montana Territory, becoming the first chapter in a legend that would grow to mythic proportions. Katherine had come west seeking a new beginning after tragedy. The daughter of a Boston physician, she had learned medicine at her father's side, assisting him in treating patients from all walks of life. Her betrothed, a promising young lawyer, had died of typhoid fever just weeks before their wedding, leaving Katherine adrift in a sea of grief. The call of the frontier had offered escape, a place where the vastness of the land might somehow match the emptiness in her heart. She had arrived in the bustling town of White Rock 6 months earlier, setting up practice as a nurse and midwife. Many had been skeptical of a woman doctor, but Katherine's knowledge and gentle touch had gradually won over the townspeople. Now, as dawn broke over the smoldering remains of the Armstrong homestead, Katherine watched Logan tend to his exhausted sons. The boys had finally fallen asleep, huddled together beneath a blanket she had retrieved from her saddlebag. "They're all I have," Logan said quietly, his voice raw from smoke and emotion. "After their mother died last winter, I promised her I'd keep them safe." He looked at the ruins of his home, his shoulders slumping. "I nearly failed them tonight." "But you didn't," Katherine said firmly. "They're alive, Mr. Armstrong. Everything else can be rebuilt." Logan turned to face her, his hazel eyes studying her with newfound clarity. "You're the doctor's woman from town." "I'm a nurse," she corrected gently. "And yes, I work from the small clinic on Ponderosa Street." "My boys and I are in your debt, Miss Kane." "Katherine, please. And as I said, there's no debt between us." She began gathering her things. "You should bring the boys into town. They need proper care. And you'll need a place to stay until you can rebuild." Logan nodded, his gaze returning to his sleeping sons. "I don't know how to thank you. Seeing them safe is thanks enough." Katherine mounted her horse, wincing at the pull of burned skin on her hands. "Come to the clinic when you arrive in town. I'll tend to any injuries." As she rode away, Katherine felt Logan's eyes follow her. Something stirred within her, something she had thought long buried with her fiancé. She pushed the feeling aside, attributing it to the heightened emotions of the night. There was no room in her life for such sentiments, not when her work required all her focus and strength. Little did she know that fate had other plans. 2 days later, Logan arrived in White Rock with his boys in tow. They had stayed with neighbors initially, salvaging what little they could from the ruins of their home. Now they stood uncertainly in the doorway of Katherine's small clinic, the boys peering around their father's legs with curious eyes. "Miss Kane," Logan said, removing his hat, "I hope we're not intruding." Katherine set aside the herbs she'd been grinding and smiled warmly at the trio. "Not at all. Please come in." William and Samuel stepped into the clinic, eyes wide as they took in the neat rows of medicine bottles, the examination table, the charts of the human body on the walls. "How are you feeling?" Katherine asked, kneeling to examine the boys more closely. They had minor burns and scratches, but nothing too serious. "Sammy had bad dreams," William volunteered, protectively putting an arm around his younger brother. "That's to be expected after such a frightening experience," Katherine said, her voice gentle. "But dreams can't hurt you. And look how brave you both were." Logan watched the interaction with something akin to wonder. His sons, normally shy around strangers, especially women, seemed to blossom under Katherine's attention. Perhaps it was because she spoke to them as people, not as children to be coddled or ignored. "We've taken a room at the boarding house," Logan explained as Katherine applied a soothing salve to Samuel's burns. "Mr. Peterson at the lumber mill has offered me work. It's not ranching, but it'll keep us fed until I can rebuild." "That's good to hear," Catherine finished with Samuel and turned her attention to William. "And how is your cough? I heard it that night." William looked surprised that she'd noticed such a detail amidst the chaos. "Better, madam." Catherine reached for her stethoscope. "Let me listen to your chest, just to be sure." As she examined William, Logan couldn't help but study her. In the daylight, away from the terror and smoke, he could see her clearly for the first time. Her auburn hair was neatly pinned back, though a few strands had escaped to frame a face that was more handsome than beautiful, with high cheekbones and a determined chin. Her eyes, though they were remarkable, a clear, vibrant blue that seemed to see right through pretense. She was nothing like his late wife, Emily, who had been delicate and fair, with a gentle disposition. Katherine Kane had a strength about her, a sense of purpose that radiated from her like heat from a stove. It was both intimidating and compelling. "Your lungs sound clear," Catherine pronounced, giving William a smile. "But I want you to drink this tea twice daily." She moved to her cabinet and measured herbs into a small pouch. "It will help prevent any lingering effects from the smoke." "Thank you," Logan said, accepting the pouch. "What do I owe you?" Catherine waved away the question. "Consider it my welcome gift to your family." "We can't keep accepting charity," Logan protested. Catherine's eyes flashed. "It's not charity, Mr. Armstrong, it's community. Someday, you'll help someone else in need. That's how we survive out here." Her words struck a chord. Logan had always prided himself on self-sufficiency, on needing no one, but the fire had humbled him, showing how quickly everything could be lost. "You're right," he conceded. "And please, call me Logan." "Logan," she repeated, and he found himself appreciating the way his name sounded in her voice. Over the following weeks, the Armstrongs became regular visitors to Catherine's clinic. Sometimes it was for legitimate medical concerns: a splinter, a cough that wouldn't quit, a fever that briefly worried. Other times, Logan invented reasons to visit, bringing freshly cut wood for her stove or game he'd hunted. The town noticed. In a place like White Rock, little escaped observation. Whispers followed Catherine as she made her rounds, some approving, others less so. The handsome widower and the spinster doctor it made for compelling gossip. Catherine ignored the talk. She told herself that her interest in the Armstrong family was purely professional. The boys needed motherly attention, and Logan needed support as he rebuilt his life. That was all. But when Logan appeared at her door one evening in late October, hat in hand and a nervous expression on his face, she felt a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with professional concern. "I was wondering," he said, his usually confident voice hesitant, "if you might join us for supper tomorrow. The boys have been asking, and Mrs. Holloway at the boarding house said she'd be happy to cook something special." Catherine hesitated, aware of how such an invitation might be interpreted by the town. "Logan, please," he said, meeting her eyes directly. "You've done so much for us. Let us do this small thing in return." How could she refuse when he looked at her that way? "All right," she agreed. "Tomorrow evening, then." The supper was a simple affair: roasted chicken, potatoes, fresh bread. But to Catherine, who typically ate alone at her small table in the back of the clinic, it felt like a feast. The boys chattered excitedly, competing for her attention with tales of their adventures around town. "Miss Catherine, did you know that Mr. Jenkins has a wooden leg?" Samuel asked, his eyes wide. "He showed us how he takes it off at night." Catherine laughed. "Mr. Jenkins is very proud of that leg. He ordered it all the way from Chicago after the mining accident." "Pa says you're smart as any doctor," William declared. "He says if more ladies were like you, the world would be a better place." Logan nearly choked on his water. "William, that was a private conversation." Catherine felt a blush creep up her neck, but she smiled at William. "Your father is very kind, and perhaps someday more women will become doctors. The world is changing." Not fast enough, Logan muttered, then seemed surprised at his own words. After the meal, when the boys had been tucked into bed in the small adjoining room, Logan and Katherine sat by the fire with cups of coffee. A comfortable silence stretched between them, broken only by the occasional pop of the fire. "They adore you," Logan said finally, looking into his cup rather than at her. "They're wonderful boys. You should be proud." "I am." He set his cup down and finally met her gaze. "Katherine, I never properly thanked you for what you did that night. Words seem inadequate." "Logan, no, please let me finish." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I've been on my own with them since Emily died. It's been hard. I thought I had to be both mother and father to them, and I was failing at both. Then you came along and showed me that maybe I don't have to do it all alone." Katherine felt a tightness in her throat. "Everyone needs help sometimes. It's more than that." Logan's voice dropped lower. "When I saw you run into that fire for my boys strangers to you, I felt something I thought had died with Emily. Hope, maybe. Or faith in the goodness of people." His words touched something deep within Katherine, a place that had been closed off since the death of her fiancé. "I understand," she said softly. "After I lost James, I thought that part of me was gone forever. The part that could care deeply, risk everything for love. And now?" Logan's question hung in the air between them. Katherine looked into his eyes, saw the mixture of vulnerability and strength there. "Now I'm not so sure." It was as close as either of them could come to a declaration, but it was enough for that evening. When Logan walked Katherine back to her clinic, his hand brushed hers briefly in the darkness, and that simple touch sent a jolt through her that reminded her, vividly, that her heart was very much alive. As winter settled over Montana, bringing with it bitter cold and early darkness, the relationship between Katherine and Logan deepened. What had begun as gratitude evolved into friendship, and from friendship blossomed something neither had been looking for, but both desperately needed. Logan continued working at the lumber mill, saving every penny toward rebuilding his ranch. In the evenings, he often brought his sons to Katherine's clinic, where she would read to them from her medical books, simplifying the content but never talking down to them. William, especially, showed a keen interest in medicine, asking questions that impressed Katherine with their insight. "He has your curiosity," she told Logan one evening as they watched the boy carefully examining a diagram of the human skeleton. "No, that's all you," Logan replied softly. "Before you, he never showed any interest in learning. Now he talks about becoming a doctor someday." The comment warmed Katherine in a way that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in her small stove. December brought heavy snowfall that blanketed White Rock in white. The week before Christmas, a blizzard hit the town, trapping residents in their homes for 3 days. When it finally subsided, Logan trudged through knee-deep snow to check on Katherine. He found her exhausted, having spent the storm tending to the baker's youngest child, who had developed pneumonia. The little girl had pulled through, but Katherine had barely slept. "You need to rest," Logan insisted, taking the broom from her hands as she attempted to clear the snow from her doorstep. "There's too much to do," she protested weakly, but allowed him to guide her inside. "The town can survive without you for one afternoon." He sat her down by the fire and set about making tea. "Let someone take care of you for a change." Katherine watched him move about her small kitchen with surprising competence. "You're good at that." "I've had practice," he said with a wry smile. "Emily was often unwell, especially after Samuel was born." It was the first time he had spoken of his late wife with ease, without the shadow of grief darkening his features. Katherine recognized this as the healing. It was not a forgetting, but an integration of loss into the fabric of life. "Tell me about her," Katherine said, accepting the cup of tea he offered. Logan settled into the chair across from her, his expression thoughtful. She was gentle, kind. She loved poetry and would read it to the boys, even when they were too young to understand the words. He smiled at the memory. She wasn't made for frontier life, to be honest. She was from Philadelphia, used to comforts. But she followed me west because she believed in me. She sounds lovely, Katherine said sincerely. She was. Logan met Katherine's eyes directly. But she wouldn't want me to live in the past forever. She made me promise, at the end, to find happiness again. For myself, and for the boys. The unspoken question hung between them, as delicate and complex as a snowflake. James and I never had the chance to say goodbye, Katherine said after a moment, finding herself ready, finally, to share this part of herself. The fever took him so quickly. One day we were planning our wedding, and the next. She shook her head, dispelling the memory. I came west because Boston held too many ghosts. I thought I was running away, but now I think perhaps I was running towards something without knowing it. Logan set his cup down and reached across the small space to take her hand. His fingers were rough with calluses, but his touch was gentle. Katherine, I don't want to rush you. I know how gossip works in a small town, and I respect your position here too much to compromise it. But I need you to know that what I feel for you is real. It's not gratitude or convenience. It's... I know, she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. I feel it too. The confession, simple as it was, shifted something between them. Logan's grip on her hand tightened slightly, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. We could take it slowly, he suggested. Court properly. Show the town this isn't some scandalous affair. Katherine laughed softly. Logan Armstrong, are you concerned about my reputation? Shouldn't I be? You're a respected professional in this community. And you're a respected father and hard worker. She turned her hand in his so their palms met. But yes, perhaps a proper courtship would be wise, for the boys' sake as much as for appearances. The smile that spread across Logan's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. Then may I call on you tomorrow evening, Miss Kane? Perhaps take you for a sleigh ride if the weather permits. Katherine matched his formal tone with a playful one of her own. You may indeed, Mr. Armstrong. I shall look forward to it. Their courtship through that winter became the talk of White Rock, but not in the scandalous way either had feared. Instead, the townspeople watched with approval as the couple attended church together, went on chaperoned outings, and included the Armstrong boys in many of their activities. Sheriff Tom Hawkins, who had long harbored a silent admiration for Katherine, was among the first to publicly offer his blessing. Armstrong's a good man, he told Katherine after church one Sunday, and those boys need a mother's influence. We're taking things slowly, Tom, Katherine replied, though she couldn't hide her smile. Course you are, the sheriff said with a knowing look. Just don't take too long. Life's short out here. It was a truth Katherine knew all too well. The frontier was unforgiving, and tomorrow was promised to no one. Each day brought reminders of mortality, the trapper who lost fingers to frostbite, the young mother who nearly died in childbirth, the old-timer who simply didn't wake one morning. Perhaps that was why, when spring finally arrived in a rush of melting snow and green shoots, Katherine found herself ready to embrace the future rather than fear it. Logan had begun construction on a new home on his property, this time with stone as well as timber, a precaution against future fires. Katherine rode out with him one sunny April morning to see the progress. The foundation was laid, and the frame of the house stood proudly against the blue sky. Logan led her through what would eventually be rooms, describing his plans with an enthusiasm that was infectious. The kitchen will be here, twice as big as the old one. And this, he gestured to a sunny corner, I thought could be a small surgery, if you wanted. so you wouldn't have to ride all the way back to town for every patient. Catherine stopped in her tracks. A surgery? Here? Logan suddenly looked uncertain. I thought, well, I hoped. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm making assumptions, aren't I? I'm sorry. No, Catherine said quickly, reaching for his hand. I'm just surprised. You've thought about me being here, working from your home? Our home, he corrected softly, if you wanted it to be. Catherine looked around at the half-built structure, trying to imagine it completed, filled with life and laughter. She saw herself tending to patients in that sunny corner, teaching William about medicine, telling Samuel bedtime stories. She saw Logan coming in from working the land, his face lighting up when he saw her. It was a vision of a future she had stopped believing was possible for herself. Logan, are you asking what I think you're asking? He took both her hands in his expression serious. I know it hasn't been that long, and maybe I should wait. Do this more properly. But Catherine, when you ran into that fire to save my boys, you became a part of our family. Everything since has only confirmed what I think I knew even then. He took a deep breath. I love you. The boys love you. Will you marry me? Be a mother to my sons? Partner in my life? Tears welled in Catherine's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. Logan's face broke into a radiant smile. He lifted her off her feet in an embrace that spoke of promises and possibilities, of a future neither had dared to dream of finding again. The news of their engagement spread through White Rock faster than a prairie fire. Most reactions were positive, though a few of the town's more traditional members expressed concern about the relatively short courtship. But as spring blossomed into summer, even the skeptics had to admit that the couple seemed well matched. Catherine continued her medical practice, but now she divided her time between her clinic in town and visits to the surrounding farms and ranches. Logan worked tirelessly on their new home, determined to have it ready before winter returned. The wedding was set for September, when the harvests would be in and before the weather turned. Catherine had no family to invite, but she had made true friends in White Rock who stepped forward to help with preparations. Mrs. Holloway from the boarding house insisted on baking the cake, while the ladies from the church quilting circle presented Catherine with a wedding quilt that brought tears to her eyes. It's the pattern we call mother's love, explained Mrs. Peterson, the mill owner's wife. Seemed fitting, given how you've already mothered half the town with your doctoring. The day before the wedding, a letter arrived for Catherine. The return address made her hands tremble. It was from her father's law firm in Boston. She had written to inform him of her marriage, though she had not expected a reply. Their relationship had been strained since her decision to move west, a choice he had deemed foolish and beneath her station. With trepidation, she opened the envelope. Inside was a brief note from her father's secretary, informing her that Dr. Kane had passed away 2 months prior. Enclosed was a bank draft representing her inheritance, a sum substantial enough to take her breath away, and a small package wrapped in tissue paper. The package contained her mother's wedding ring, a simple gold band worn smooth by decades of wear. A note in her father's handwriting, dated shortly before his death, accompanied it. Catherine, I was wrong to judge your choices. Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become. May her ring bring you the same happiness it brought us. Father. Catherine clutched the ring to her chest, overwhelmed by the complexity of emotions, grief for a reconciliation that came too late, gratitude for this final gift, and a bittersweet joy that her father had, in the end, offered his blessing in his own way. When she showed Logan the ring and letter that evening, he held her while she cried, understanding without words the significance of this connection to her past. We'll use your mother's ring tomorrow, he said when her tears had subsided, and the money we can expand the house, maybe build a proper clinic attached to it. Catherine nodded, imagining the possibilities. We could help more people. Maybe even bring a real doctor to White Rock eventually. You are a real doctor, Logan insisted, as he always did when she diminished her skills, with or without the formal degree. His faith in her was unwavering, a constant that still surprised and moved her. In Logan, Catherine had found not just love, but a partner who saw her as she truly was and valued her for it. Their wedding day dawned clear and golden, the kind of perfect September day that seemed created especially for celebrations. The small church in White Rock was packed to capacity, with some guests standing in the back and others peering through the windows. William and Samuel, scrubbed clean and dressed in new suits, stood proudly beside their father at the altar. Catherine had asked Sheriff Hawkins to walk her down the aisle, a request that had visibly moved the typically stoic lawman. "You look beautiful," the sheriff whispered as they paused at the church entrance. "Armstrong's a lucky man." Catherine smiled, feeling a serenity she had not expected. "I'm the lucky one, Tom." As the simple organ music began, Catherine walked toward her future, her gaze fixed on Logan. He watched her approach with such naked adoration that whispers rippled through the congregation. This was no marriage of convenience or necessity, but one of deep and genuine love. The ceremony was brief, but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Logan's kiss was gentle but promising, appropriate for the setting but hinting at the passion they would share in private. The boys cheered loudly, prompting laughter from the guests. The celebration afterward spilled out of the church and into the town square, where tables had been set up for a community feast. Everyone had contributed something: fried chicken, baked beans, pies of every description. Music from fiddles and a banjo filled the air as townspeople danced and celebrated. Catherine found herself pulled into conversation after conversation, accepting congratulations and well wishes from people who had once viewed her with suspicion, but now embraced her as one of their own. "You've changed this town," Reverend Mills told her as they shared a moment of quiet amidst the festivities. "When you first arrived, many weren't sure what to make of a woman practicing medicine. Now I can't imagine White Rock without you." "The town has changed me too," Catherine replied, watching as Logan spun Samuel in a circle, the boys' laughter carrying across the square. "It gave me a home when I thought I'd never have one again." As dusk fell, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the continuing celebration. Catherine found herself in Logan's arms for a slow dance, their first moment alone, relatively speaking, since the ceremony. "Happy, Mrs. Armstrong?" he murmured against her ear. The name was still new, but it felt right. "More than I ever thought possible." "The boys are staying with the Petersons tonight," Logan reminded her, his voice dropping lower. "We'll have the boarding house room to ourselves." Catherine felt a blush warm her cheeks. Though they had shared kisses and embraces during their courtship, they had been careful to maintain propriety. Tonight would be different. "I look forward to being alone with you, husband," she whispered back, enjoying the way his arms tightened around her at her words. Later, when they finally slipped away from the celebration, they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets of White Rock. The town seemed transformed by night, the familiar buildings softened by moonlight. "I keep thinking about that night," Logan said suddenly, his voice reflective. "How different everything would be if you hadn't been riding by. If you hadn't been brave enough to enter that burning house. But I was, and I did." Catherine squeezed his hand. "Sometimes I think we're given exactly the moments we need, though they rarely come in the form we expect." Logan stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "I want you to know something. What I feel for you, it's not gratitude. I'm grateful, yes, that you saved my boys. But I love you for who you are, not for what you did." Catherine reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. I know that, Logan. And I love you not because you needed saving, but because of the man you are, the father you are, the husband I know you'll be. Their kiss beneath the stars was a promise, sealed with the certainty that what had begun in fire had been transformed into something enduring a love as strong and vast as the Montana sky above them. The new Armstrong home was completed just as the first snow fell. It stood strong and inviting on the hillside, twice the size of the original homestead. Logan had incorporated everything Katherine had suggested: the surgery space, with large windows for natural light, a spacious kitchen where the family could gather, comfortable bedrooms for the boys with a shared playroom between them. Their first winter as a family passed in a blur of joy and adjustments. Katherine maintained her practice in town 3 days a week, but increasingly found patients coming to their home as well. Logan added cattle to his ranch operations, building the foundation for what he hoped would grow into a successful business to pass on to his sons. The boys thrived under Katherine's influence. William's interest in medicine continued to grow, and he became her eager assistant, learning to prepare simple remedies and bandage minor wounds. Samuel, always the more sensitive of the two, blossomed with the stability and love that now filled their home. His nightmares about the fire gradually subsided, replaced by dreams of adventures and explorations. Spring brought more changes. Katherine discovered she was with child, a development that filled Logan with joy and the boys with excitement at the prospect of a new sibling. "I never thought I'd have this chance," Katherine confessed one night as Logan's hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach. "After James died, I convinced myself that motherhood wasn't in my future, that caring for patients would be enough." "And now?" Logan asked, his voice tender in the darkness of their bedroom. "Now I understand that the heart expands to encompass all forms of love." She covered his hand with her own. "Being a mother to William and Samuel has taught me that. They made room in their hearts for me, and I for them. This baby will be another chapter in that story, not a replacement or a beginning." As Katherine's pregnancy progressed, word spread beyond White Rock about the remarkable woman who served as both doctor and mother to the community. Patients began arriving from neighboring towns and distant homesteads, seeking her care. Some were initially skeptical about being treated by a woman, but few left without being converted by her knowledge and compassion. One rainy afternoon in late July, Katherine was surprised by a visitor she never expected to see again. Melissa Thornton, the wife of a wealthy rancher from the next county, arrived in a fine carriage, requesting Katherine specifically. "I remember you," Katherine said as she ushered the elegantly dressed woman into her surgery. "Your husband brought you to my clinic in town last year with a persistent cough." "Yes," Mrs. Thornton confirmed. "You diagnosed my consumption when 3 male doctors had dismissed my concerns as female hysteria." Her gaze dropped to Katherine's now visible pregnancy. "I see congratulations are in order." "Thank you." Katherine gestured for her to sit. "How have you been feeling? The treatment regimen?" "Has worked wonders," Mrs. Thornton interrupted. "I've followed your instructions to the letter. Fresh air, rest, the herbal preparations. I'm much improved." She straightened her shoulders. "But I'm not here as a patient today. I have a proposition for you, Mrs. Armstrong." Katherine raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What sort of proposition?" "My husband and I would like to fund the establishment of a proper hospital in White Rock, with you as its director." Mrs. Thornton spoke with the confidence of someone accustomed to making things happen through the power of wealth. "Nothing elaborate at first, perhaps 5 or 6 beds, a surgery more advanced than what you have here, quarters for yourself, and a nurse or 2. Katherine stared at her, momentarily speechless. "That's an extremely generous offer. But why White Rock? Surely Collinsville would be more suitable, being larger." "Perhaps," Mrs. Thornton acknowledged. "But you're here, and you're the one I trust." My husband has been convinced of your abilities since you succeeded where his expensive city doctors failed. She paused, her expression softening slightly. And we've heard the stories, Mrs. Armstrong, about how you ran into a burning building to save children who weren't your own, about how you ride through blizzards to deliver babies and treat fevers. This territory needs more than just medical knowledge. It needs the kind of dedication you've shown. The proposal was both thrilling and overwhelming. Catherine thought of the inheritance from her father, still largely untouched. Combined with the Thorntons' offer, it could create something truly significant for the community. I need to discuss this with my husband, she said finally, and I would want certain conditions. The hospital must treat everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. And I want to train others nurses at first, but eventually doctors. Women as well as men. Mrs. Thornton smiled, a hint of satisfaction in her expression. I expected nothing less from you. Take whatever time you need to consider. The offer stands. That evening, after the boys were in bed, Catherine shared the unexpected proposal with Logan. She watched his face carefully, uncertain of his reaction. A hospital would mean more demands on her time, more responsibilities beyond their home and family. To her surprise, Logan's expression was one of pride rather than concern. You should do it, he said without hesitation. This territory needs what you can build, Catherine. And our children, including this little one, he placed a gentle hand on her belly, will grow up seeing what's possible when you follow your calling. It would change things, Catherine cautioned. I'd be busier, especially at first. Then we'll adapt. Logan's certainty was unwavering. The boys and I managed before you came into our lives, though not nearly as well. We can certainly manage to share you with the people who need you, now that we have the security of knowing you'll always come home to us. His understanding moved her deeply. I love you, Logan Armstrong. And I love you, Katherine Armstrong, every remarkable inch of you. In late autumn, Catherine gave birth to a daughter they named Emily Catherine, honoring both the mother the boys had lost and the woman who had become their second mother. The birth was difficult, testing even Catherine's considerable strength, but the moment the midwife placed the squirming, red-faced infant in her arms, the ordeal faded into insignificance. Logan brought the boys in to meet their sister, their faces a mixture of awe and uncertainty. She's so small, Samuel whispered, gently touching the baby's clenched fist with one finger. But she'll grow, William said, with the authority of his 9 years, and we'll teach her everything, how to ride and fish and read medical books. I'm counting on you both to be the best big brothers, Catherine told them, her heart so full it felt it might overflow. Emily is very lucky to have you. Logan sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Catherine's shoulders, his other hand stroking his daughter's downy head. We're all lucky, he said, his voice rough with emotion. To have found each other, to be a family. The family grew and thrived alongside Catherine's professional accomplishments. The White Rock Hospital opened the following spring, a modest but modern facility that quickly became a lifeline for the region. Catherine trained a cadre of nurses, including young women from surrounding communities who might otherwise have had few options beyond marriage or service. William, true to his early interest, began formal medical studies when he turned 18, traveling east to attend college with Catherine's full support and Logan's proud blessing. Samuel found his calling closer to home, showing a natural talent for working with horses that complemented the family's expanding ranch operations. Emily grew into a spirited girl who combined her mother's intelligence with her father's steadiness, often accompanying Catherine on her rounds once she was old enough. When she was 8, the family expanded again with the birth of twins, Thomas and Elizabeth, who brought renewed laughter and chaos to the Armstrong household. As the years passed, Catherine's reputation spread throughout the territory and beyond. Articles were written about the mother doctor of Montana, who had transformed medical care on the frontier through determination and compassion. Young women wrote to her from across the country, seeking advice on pursuing medical careers of their own. But for all her professional acclaim, Catherine's deepest satisfaction came from her family. On the 20th anniversary of the fire that had first brought them together, Logan organized a surprise celebration, gathering not just their children but dozens of people whose lives Catherine had touched over the years. "I wanted to mark the night that changed everything," he explained as they stood together, watching their grown children and younger ones mingle with the guests. "The night you proved that motherhood isn't just about who carries a child, but about who carries the capacity for love and sacrifice." Catherine leaned against her husband, feeling the solid strength that had been her foundation through 2 decades of partnership. At 50, Logan's hair was streaked with silver, and the lines around his eyes had deepened, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever known. "That night seems both yesterday and a lifetime ago," she reflected. "I was just passing by, Logan. I had no idea I was riding toward my destiny." "I think that's how destiny usually works," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It disguises itself as ordinary moments until we look back and see the pattern they created." As twilight settled over the celebration, Catherine found herself approached by a young woman she recognized as one of her former patients, now grown with children of her own. "Dr. Armstrong," the woman said, using the title the community had bestowed upon Catherine regardless of formal credentials. "I wanted to thank you again, not just for saving my life when I was a girl, but for showing all of us what's possible." She glanced around at the gathering. "You've been a mother to more than just your own children. You've been a mother to the whole West." The words touched Catherine deeply, capturing something essential about the life she had built. She had carried no child when she rode toward that distant fire all those years ago, but she had carried within her the capacity to love beyond boundaries, to create family from the ashes of loss, to mother not just individuals, but an entire community's hopes for a better future. As the stars emerged in the vast Montana sky, Catherine looked out at the faces illuminated by lantern light, her husband, their children, the countless others connected to them through bonds of care and service. The path that had led her west, away from the grief of losing her first love, had wound its way to a fulfillment beyond anything she could have imagined. Logan's arm tightened around her waist, anchoring her in the present moment even as her thoughts drifted through the years they had shared. "No regrets?" he asked softly, a question he had posed on their wedding day and on many significant occasions since. Catherine turned to face him, taking in the beloved features that had become as familiar to her as her own reflection. In his eyes, she still saw the desperate father kneeling in the dirt outside a burning home, but also the man who had rebuilt from those ashes, the husband who had supported her dreams, the father who had raised children to be courageous and kind. "Not one," she answered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Every fire, every storm, every challenge, they were all worth it to arrive exactly here, with you." Their kiss, witnessed by their children and community, was both a confirmation of the past and a promise for the future, a testament to the enduring power of a love that had begun in flames but had transformed into something as essential and life-giving as breath itself. In the years that followed, as White Rock grew from a frontier outpost into a proper town, as the hospital expanded to include a training program for nurses and eventually doctors, as the Armstrong children and grandchildren carried forward their parents' legacy of service and compassion, the story was told and retold, the story of a woman who carried no child but saved a cowboy's sons from fire and, in doing so, became mother to the West.